All of these other mechanisms are also driven by LPS. I won't go into every single one of them, but I'll touch on a couple like leptin resistance. Leptin resistance is the biggest driver of obesity when you look at physiology, right? Leptin resistance is the inability to understand when you're full, and then also to get those satiety measures, and then increasing metabolism after eating food to end up burning off in calories and storing sugars appropriately and balancing blood sugar levels. All of those things are dependent on the gut-brain axis, and having an endotoxic gut or an unhealthy gut is a critical component that leads to leptin resistance. Of course, lots of mood disorders are disrupted by LPS. LPS can actually bind to serotonin and dopamine receptors in the brain, making it very difficult to bind serotonin and dopamine, therefore not getting the proper impact of serotonin and dopamine in the brain itself. It's linked to depression. Elevated levels of LPS is the #1 predictor of depression and the severity of depression, and also the presence of sickness behaviors within major depressive disorders, things like cachexia, psychomotor slowness, anorexia nervosa. All of these conditions are driven by LPS. We see cognitive decline and loss of memory, of course, chronic pain. LPS can end up in the sensory neurons in the dorsal root nociceptors and stimulate pain signals. So people with fibromyalgia or chronic pain, especially if the chronic pain comes from no specific injury, a lot of that can be driven by the presence of LPS. Hypogonadism, we mentioned Parkinson's. We've talked about Alzheimer's, but same thing occurs in Parkinson's, where gut-derived LPS creates central nervous system inflammation and damage, which can lead to Parkinson's-like conditions. Autoimmunity, we talked about as well. And then this study is a really incredibly important study published in May of 2015 in the Frontiers of Immunology. They basically showed that when you look at chronic non-communicable diseases, right? So non-communicable diseases are ones that we cannot give each other. So these are basically your chronic illnesses, your metabolic syndromes, autoimmune conditions, Hashimoto's, all of these conditions that people tend to deal with. Those non-communicable diseases, when you look at them, they're all driven by low-grade inflammation, systemic low-grade inflammation. And the biggest source of systemic low-grade inflammation is the increase in bacteria and bacterial toxins translocating from a permeable intestinal wall. This sets up the stage for chronic low-grade inflammation, and they concluded that this state of endotoxemia and increasing barrier permeability and finding LPS in circulation was the biggest driver of morbidity and mortality worldwide.